Welcome to another installment of Only Time Can Tell. I'm your host, Ken. And before we begin, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. I'm going to stress hit the subscribe button so this way you get notified every time that we upload new content. And also, if you're interested, don't forget to click down below, hit the links. If you want to support the channel, we got merch down there. So feel free to browse through the website and hook a brother up. Support the channel. Do what you got to do. What are we going to talk about this week? We're going to talk about relationships. What is it that makes a successful relationship? I'm sure there's many different answers, but I'm going to try to simplify it this time around. What makes a successful relationship? And I'm not necessarily talking about, a romantic relationship, man, woman, whatever. But what makes a relationship successful? One word comes to mind, right? Investment. Investments, I think, is what's going to make a relationship successful. Now, you may be sitting up there, what are you talking about, Ken? What do you mean by investment, right? Well, if you think about it, right, there's been, a string of debates on who's more loyal, guys or girls, right? And studies have recently showed that men and women basically cheat almost at the same rate. I believe it's something like guys at 28%, women at 24%, something along that. All right, so it's basically equal, right? But what would make a relationship successful? Well, like I've always said, if you want to know the unknown, study the known, right? Guys, let's look at guys, for instance, right? Now, it's been taught, it's been assumed that guys are very, very unfaithful. But I want to challenge that notion because a lot of guys like sports, right? And if a guy's really, really into sports, if he's really, really into a team, right? If he's really invested in that team, he's not going to switch from that team, no matter how that team is playing. Perfect example. I'm a New York Knicks fan. I know what you may be thinking. I've coined the phrase being a New York Knicks fan is like a kid waiting for his absentee father to come home. You know they're gonna win, you just don't know when. But I'm a New York Knicks fan. I've always been a New York Knicks fan. My father was a Knicks fan, which is probably why I became a Knicks fan. I fell in love with the New York Knicks back in 1994. I grew up in the days where, I liked the Mark Jacksons, the Patrick Ewings, the John Starks, those guys, the Anthony Masons, Charles Oakley. That was my era, And while they weren't the most talented bunch, the one thing that I can say about them is they definitely didn't lack heart. Those guys was diving on balls. Every night they played their heart out. And that's what I loved about them, right? And although this team doesn't look anything like that team, I still rock with them. I still support them, and, and that's what I'm talking about in terms of like loyalty. We have that level of loyalty where even though these guys have been stinking up the place, you stick with it, which is no different than a job. How many times have you been on a job that you gave a lot of your time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears? You hated that job, but because you put so much of your time and energy into it, you couldn't leave it. And then when they finally let you go, like you felt sad, you felt like your world had ended. It wasn't because the job was so crucial, but it was your level of investment, right? It's the level of investment. Same thing with relationships, right? Your relationship that's going to hurt you the most when it breaks up is the one that you've invested a lot of your time and energy into. And this goes all across the board. Men, women, like whoever you spend the most time, the most energy, the most resources into is one, you're basically saying that's what's important to you. I say that to say a successful relationship is going to be a relationship where there's an investment, a significant investment. Some of my best relationships came, romantic relationships came, or not even, some of my best relationships have came because we were invested in each other, and it wasn't about, well, I gave you this much, you only gave me this much. It was like we gave the most of what we could, you know. So I just want you guys to think on that. Like if you're in a relationship, are you investing in that person all that you could? And is that person investing in you all that they could? Because that would basically tell you if you have a good relationship or not. It's the same thing like a parent relationship, right? Um, a mother, and I believe Mike Tyson and LL Cool J say this on an interview once, where, a mother will basically do every and anything she can for her child because everything she does for that child is for that child's survival, which is really, really deep, right? Whereas she can never love a man in that same capacity. And I was just like, yeah, that makes sense because I guess at the end of the day, what you're basically talking about is the ultimate form of love. And there's an unconditional love, right? And I know for me, and that's how I used to define, that's how I define the difference between being in love and loving someone. Being in love is an unconditional love. Like no matter what happens, no matter what you do, I'm going to love you no matter what. And loving someone, there are conditions. I'm going to love you, but if you cross this line, while I may still love you, the dynamic of the relationship is going to change. Okay, and then the next point, which actually should have been the first point, but what makes a successful relationship? Communication. How well do you guys communicate? How well do we communicate? How comfortable are we with putting out there what our intentions are? Because a lot of people, I think Chris Rock said it, when you go out on a date with someone, you meet that person's representative, you know. Why we got to put the representative to the side and be like, yo, listen, you know, I'm looking to get married. Are you looking to get married? Or, I'm just looking for, a casual thing. Are you looking for a casual thing? Got to put it out there. So this way, there's no surprises, no expectations, no false expectations. Like everything should just be out in the open. So you got to basically have communication, and you figure once you have communication, if you guys decide you wanted to get into a relationship together, then you got to look at the type of investment you guys are willing to make in one another. And it's funny too because I always like to bring it back to my experience and talking to my son, and he was sharing with me that he had met someone online and he was really upset when the relationship didn't pan out. It didn't work out the way that he thought. I'm just like, oh really? Well, what website did you meet her on? And he told me Hinge. It's like, dude, like, you looking for love on Hinge? Like, it's like, no, that's not how you do it, man. We don't do it like that, And once again, this is one of the reasons why this generation's got to put down the social media and actually get out into the real world and interact with people. As a personal trainer, you shouldn't necessarily, you should automatically know like online is basically where you're going to go for your casual. Really, he should be using that for his business. Shouldn't even be looking for any type of relationships online or whatever. And, you basically, with his business as a personal trainer, you're going to interact with people. And chances are you're going to interact with people who actually have like interests, you're working out, they're working out. You can build a bond from there, which is another point. Like, it's very important, in addition to you guys having communication and in addition to you guys making investments, do you guys have common interests? What are the common interests? And this can be tricky because I know, ironically, I used to make it a point to be like, hey, this is what I'm about. This is what I like. I like A, B, C, and D. And then the girl who was interested in dating me would be like, you know what? I like A, B, C, and D too. And I'm like, oh, wow, really? We must be a match made in heaven. Not realizing that she's saying what she needs to say to get my attention or to get some type of approval from it. I know it's surprising, but it does happen. But, she's saying what she needs to say to draw my interest, to get my attention, and only to find out that, 90 days later or 90 dates later, that some of those things that were common interests were actually fabricated. So that's why I definitely want to stress communication is really, really important. Communication, intentions, investments. These are core components that would help lead to remarkable relationships. And there's a few other things too, but I don't want this to be like a 14-hour video. So we're going to have to break this up into segments. But I'm real curious to know what you guys think. Don't forget to leave some comments or whatever. Let me know. Is Ken right on this, or Ken, you don't know what the hell you're talking about? I welcome it all. Give me your critiques, give me your criticism, because like I said, this life is all about learning and evolving. I'm learning and I'm evolving, and hopefully you're doing the same. And we can do that together. All right, so that's going to do it for this week. And don't forget, you heard it here. Only time can tell. I'm your host, Ken. Don't forget, share, like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. Let's grow this channel. Peace.